Not doing our usual introduction today because we're not in the shed in the garden at the house that sat down. Today we are in the conservatory. Got a really exciting project to share with you today on a massive canvas, which is why we're in the conservatory, because I'm popping my canvas on the floor with plenty of newspaper underneath it. And we're using a small to medium-sized decorator's roller and at the moment a nice lemon yellow paint, which is going on in a quite nice thick dollops. Just easing it round. Obviously it is a very large canvas, so I'm going to have to walk around it. I would suggest though that if you've got any knee or back or ankle problems, that perhaps you think about popping your canvas up on a higher level, maybe a table or something, so that you're not putting too much of a strain on it, because it does take a little while to actually cover the entire canvas. And quite a lot of paint as well, but it's so much fun to do. Now we're starting with the yellow in particular because we're going to be mixing in some other colours, and I've experimented to find the best way of doing this so that you still get quite a nice fresh colour. So in we go with a light green there, which again is another one of my favourite colours, mixes ever so well with the yellow. And we're just using a sort of crisscross action there to work the paint well into the texture of the canvas. And I do want there to be an element of mixing going on here, but also quite a nice steady amount of coverage of the canvas. It does take a little while to get the paint to work in to cover all of the white of the canvas underneath. But the crisscross action is the best way to do that. I'm also not wanting a steady coverage either. I'm actually wanting it to be a little bit patchy, so a little bit more yellow going on there to work on the crossover section. Now, with the whole of this canvas, as we're going to be putting all of the different rainbow colours on, in order to stop the colours mixing to a sort of muddy brown, which if you do mix all elements of the colour wheel together, then you will end up with a brown or a murky sort of black colour. So what I've got with this roller is the ability to actually pop the sponge roll off and put a fresh one on. But while I'm still using the green and the yellow, mixing those together isn't going to give me brown, which is useful. It's once we start adding in the sort of blues and the reds as well that you end up with an unfortunate consequence. But again, I've gone into a darker green here. It's almost like a slight blue green here, which mixes in and deepens that lovely green. Again, getting right to the edges. I do like working on big canvases, I have to admit, but it does take a bit of confidence to actually do it for the first time. But this one is actually really quite an easy one to do. Just takes a bit of time. The only other problem, of course, is once it's finished, where do you put it? So you maybe need to think about which wall you're planning on putting it on. Clean roller there, I believe, putting a little bit of extra yellow on, and because it's a clean roller I can then start moving into the reds. So we're going into a darker yellow, more of a cadmium yellow, and then I will eventually go into an orange and a red. That's some of the red going on there, bit of orange, all trying to merge that in together. Now it's a tricky one, that one, because the red is quite a powerful colour. So I'm obviously going back in with quite a lot more of the cadmium yellow. Cadmium orange. Okay, I'm happy with that for the moment. Another clean roller. And because that dark green is dry, I can then come in with a light blue. Once I've got the light blue on there and I've got a nice clean coverage, I then start mixing back in some of that dark green, so that it merges with the light blue. And then below that I start bringing in a more powerful blue, more of an indigo, because I'd like some of the light blue to show, but not too much. but it's important to have the light blue there as part of the colour change. And the same goes as you move from the indigo into the violet. I've got a very light violet there, and then a dark violet going over the top to mix it in. But that lighter distinction area is quite important. Otherwise, the two dark colours overpower each other. Okay, so there we have the large canvas finished, and we now have to decide what we're going to do with it. I've had an idea in my head for a while, I just haven't had time to work on it. You can see here that I've popped the canvas on the wall, and you will note that the canvas is at an unusual angle. I've actually put it up as a diamond rather than as a square. And I'm going to be painting this image onto it using white. Now the colours are so beautifully strong that anything that goes onto it has to work very well with them. And I'm trying to get something that will stand out but not overpower and detract from the lovely colours behind it. So I'm going to be painting this image on using a very small brush, using a sketch style, and using white acrylic paint. So I'm just going to speed it up for you because this bit did take really quite a while. It's very detailed work. Okay, you can start to see the image of a little boy running into the picture with his arms outstretched away from you. Now, this particular painting was inspired by all those lovely rainbows that I've seen up around the village from the village children, and they seem to spread such a message of hope that, you know, the future's bright and it's out there, and in the long run everything's going to be okay. And I just wanted to paint this as a sort of tribute to them because I think it's such a lovely thing for them to do. So the concept being that this little boy is running away, scattering rainbows. So there he is running into the picture, and now I've got to decide what I'm going to do with the rest of the canvas because he's quite a small part of it. So here we go. Up here we can see the start of the rest of the picture. Again, I'm using white. I will do the whole of the rest of this sketch in white. Again, quite fine work. And there we have a little bit more coming through. There we go. I think you can probably guess what that is. This little boy is chasing seagulls, and he's causing them to fly up into the air and scatter. And the whole concept behind the painting is that these paintings of rainbows that the children are scattering around the village are a bit like messages of hope to everybody. And my little boy in the painting, in scattering the seagulls, he is sending the message of the rainbow far and wide. It's very fanciful, I appreciate that, but it's in my head, so that's why I'm painting it. And my mum loves the fact that her grandchildren post pictures of rainbows through her front door. They make her smile, and I just like that. Now I've got to ground my little boy, so we've got a little shadow on the ground underneath him, reflecting down into whatever it is he's standing on. The fact that it doesn't really make a lot of sense doesn't matter. It's not supposed to be a real picture. It's just a concept, a little story. So now it's not quite finished because I, having looked at it, appreciate that it needed a few more birds, which I then came back to do later. And then looking at it again, I felt that in fact it wasn't balanced enough because the little boy's figure didn't stand out sufficiently. So I'm now just emphasizing sections of the child's physique where the sunlight perhaps would land. So reinforcing the highlights, which effectively will make the majority of the figure stand out. But I didn't want to reinforce the entire figure because that would look unusual. I want it to look a little bit more realistic. And by pulling out the highlights, that should achieve my objective. There we go. Looks like it's working. Now I have to confess I've really enjoyed working on this. It's been very therapeutic and I've got to use all my favourite colours, which are the really bright ones. And I've done some sketching as well, which is always fun. Now, of course, you don't have to do the figure. I think this concept would work really well with just the birds, actually. So if you're not confident drawing and sketching figures, please don't worry about that. These art tutorials are all about relaxing and having some fun. Not about pressure, it's not about the final piece, and it's not about feeling you have to achieve anything. It's just about spending a little bit of time relaxing. So if there's anyone you know out there who you think would appreciate spending a little bit of time doing some art, by all means send them a link so that they can check it out for themselves. I always love knowing that there are people watching these videos. If you're pleased with your painting and you fancy posting it on social media, do tag me in because I'd love to see them. I hope you join me next time, and in the meantime, please take care.